Haggai chapter 2, we are working through the minor prophets in our class, section by section, verse by verse. One more section to cover in the minor prophets, and that is the post-exilic prophets, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi, the three who prophesied after the return from the captivity in Babylon. Haggai chapter 2 is what we'll cover this morning. Haggai 2:1, in the 7th month, in the 21st day of the month, came the word of the Lord by the prophet Haggai, saying, Speak now to Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and to Joshua, the son of Josedek, the high priest, and to the residue of the people, saying, Who is left among you that saw this house in her first glory? And how do you see it now? Is it not in your eyes in comparison of it as nothing? Yet now be strong, O Zerubbabel, saith the Lord, and be strong, O Joshua, son of Josedek, the high priest. And be strong, all ye people of the land, saith the Lord, and work, for I am with you, saith the Lord of hosts. According to the word that I covenanted with you when ye came out of Egypt, so my spirit remaineth among you. Fear ye not. For thus saith the Lord of hosts, Yet once, it is a little while, and I will shake the heavens and the earth and the sea and the dry land, and I will shake all nations, and the desire of all nations shall come, and I will fill this house with glory, saith the Lord of hosts. The silver is mine, and the gold is mine, saith the Lord of hosts. The glory of this latter house shall be greater than that of the former, saith the Lord of hosts. And in this place will I give peace, saith the Lord of hosts. In the 24th day of the 9th month, in the 2nd year of Darius, came the word of the Lord by Haggai the prophet, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, Ask now the priests concerning the law, saying, If one bear holy flesh in the skirt of his garment, and with his skirt do touch bread or pottage or wine or oil or any meat, shall it be holy? And the priest answered and said, No. And then said Haggai, If one that is unclean by a dead body touch any of these, shall it be unclean? And the priest answered and said, It shall be unclean. And then answered Haggai and said, So is this people, and so is this nation before me, saith the Lord. And so is every work of their hands, and that which they offer there is unclean. And now I pray you consider from this day and upward, from before a stone was laid upon a stone in the temple of the Lord. Since those days were, when one came into an heap of 20 measures, there were but 10. When one came to the press fat for to draw out 50 vessels out of the press, there were but 20. I smote you with blasting and with mildew, with hail, and all the labors of your hands, yet ye turned not to me, saith the Lord. Consider now from this day and upward, from the 24th day of the 9th month, even from the day that the foundation of the Lord's temple was laid, consider it. Is the seed yet in the barn? Yea, as yet the vine and the fig tree and the pomegranate and the olive tree hath not brought forth. From this day will I bless you. And again the word of the Lord came unto Haggai in the 24th day of the month, saying, Speak to Zerubbabel, governor of Judah, saying, I will shake the heavens and the earth, and I will overthrow the throne of kingdoms, and I will destroy the strength of the kingdoms of the heathen, and I will overthrow the chariots and those that ride in them, and the horses and their riders shall come down, every one by the sword of his brother. And that day, saith the Lord of hosts, will I take thee, O Zerubbabel, my servant, the son of Shealtiel, saith the Lord, and will make thee as a signet, for I have chosen thee, saith the Lord of hosts. In chapter 1, Haggai had verbally chastised the people who were sitting in their luxurious houses while the house of the Lord, the temple, lay there unbuilt, unfinished, and in ruins. Now, unlike many occasions in Israel's history, in this instance, the people responded exactly as they should have. They quickly began to gather materials. 23 days later, the reconstruction began. The prophets, though, didn't just tell them to do the work. They, Haggai and Zechariah, jumped in alongside them to help with it. All the while, though, they continued to give prophetic words encouraging the people to work. Now, we'll find 3 of those prophetic utterances in chapter 2 of Haggai. And in all of them, just as I mentioned in the first lesson at Haggai, we'll once again see the very specific dating of messages and events that so marked Haggai's message throughout. He was not just a prophet, he was also a historian. Notice, first of all, a message of perspective. Haggai 2:1 and 2. In the 7th month, in the 21st day of the month, came the word of the Lord by the prophet Haggai, saying, Speak now to Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, the governor of Judah, and to Joshua, the son of Josedek, the high priest, and to the residue of the people, saying. Now, based on the dates here, the work on rebuilding the temple had been going on for a little less than a month. It was now the 21st day of the 7th month, which means that it was the 7th day of the Feast of Tabernacles, which was the final Feast of Ingathering. Now, there is an absolutely beautiful symmetry in that. They were rebuilding the house of God during the feast that celebrated the time that God dwelt among them while they were in simple tents in the wilderness, just nomadic people being graced by the presence of the eternal God. This was also the time they celebrated the harvest that God would graciously give to them each year. Haggai's message on this day once again went out to Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and to Joshua, the son of Josedek, the high priest, and to the residue of the people. So again, this was the governor, the high priest, and all the people. There is no more king. They're not allowed to have a king anymore. They're still a tribute people, even though they're free in their land. The content of the message was this, verse 3. Who is left among you that saw this house in her first glory? And how do you see it now? Is it not in your eyes in comparison of it as nothing? Now, if you don't understand the dates and the timing, you may not grasp the numbers represented by Haggai's question. As he poses this question as to who among them had seen the temple in its first glory, the likely answer was probably quite a few old gray-headed folks who were standing around. The temple had been destroyed 68 years earlier, and many of them who were little boys and little girls that time could still remember it vividly in all of its glory. How many of you are over 68 years old now? Several hands are over 68 years old. How many of you can remember to some things back in your childhood, some places, some events? So Haggai's talking to people like that. They're in their 70s. They're in their 80s. He's saying, how many of you here remember that temple in its glory? And a lot of them did. So to them, this fledgling new temple was a fairly pitiful sight. It would clearly be nowhere near as big or grand as the first, and Haggai could see the disappointment etched on their faces. Further, there'd be no Ark of the Covenant in this one. So wasn't this alone enough to weep and to be weak in the work? That's what he's concerned about in his message. So his words are designed to change that attitude which was so weak in the resolve of the leaders and the workers. Verse 4, yet now be strong, O Zerubbabel, saith the Lord, and be strong, O Joshua, the son of Josedek, the high priest, and be strong, O ye people of the land, saith the Lord, and work, for I am with you, saith the Lord of hosts. 3 times to all 3 groups, governor, priests, and people. He said, be strong, be strong, be strong, do the work. So no, there wasn't going to be an Ark of the Covenant. There wouldn't be a glorious gold-gilded house in which it could reside. But neither the ark nor the glory of the house was ever the point to begin with. The point was for God to have a place to meet with his people and be among them. In that, then, the main thing, they hadn't lost anything. God told them, the leaders, the people, to be strong because he, ark or not, would be with them. His presence didn't depend on a box. It never had. His presence depended on willing and obedient hearts. So this, then, was the encouraging emphasis that led to the obeying of the simple command, work. Now, God through Haggai just promised that he was with them. But verse 4 wasn't the end of the sentence or the thought. Both continue into verse 5. According to the word that I covenanted with you when you came out of Egypt, so my spirit remaineth among you, fear ye not. God's promise that he was among them wasn't based on the size or grandeur of a temple. It was based on a promise that he made some 1,000 years earlier. Here was that promise he was referencing. Exodus 29, verse 45 and 46. And I will dwell among the children of Israel and will be their God. And they shall know that I am the Lord their God that brought them forth out of the land of Egypt, that I may dwell among them. I am the Lord their God. This was a covenant, and one that significantly predated the temple. Israel had somehow come to see the glorious temple of Solomon as a prerequisite to God dwelling among them, when he'd already been dwelling among them before it was built, continued dwelling among them after it was destroyed, and was even then dwelling among them as they worked to rebuild a smaller, less glorious version of it. God's promises are not based on our buildings. God's promises are based on his character. It's likely that by that point, the people were getting tentatively encouraged, but still not quite completely sold on what they were hearing. But they were about to be given an even greater reason to work on in this new, smaller temple. Verses 6 and 7. For thus saith the Lord of hosts, yet once it is a little while, and I will shake the heavens and the earth and the sea and the dry land, and I will shake all nations, and the desire of all the nations shall come, and I will fill this house with glory, saith the Lord of hosts. Now, if it seems as if the view has expanded exponentially in these words, it's because they have. This wasn't a right then thing. When he says it's a little while, there was a little bit of time before this was going to take place. These verses are messianic in nature. They deal with both the first and the second comings of Christ. When we read here of God shaking the heavens, earth, sea, dry land, all nations, we have the benefit of later scriptures to help us understand the timing. The writer of Hebrews quoted this verse and he painted it as a still future set of events. Hebrews 12:26, whose voice then shook the earth, but now he hath promised, saying, Yet once more I shake not the earth only, but also the heavens. So the events are clearly described here as being the tribulation period, and in the context of the coming of Christ to rule from his father's David's throne in Jerusalem during the millennial reign. The last part of verse 7, and the desire of all nations shall come, and I will fill this house with glory, saith the Lord of hosts, had both a near and a far messianic fulfillment. In the near term, Malachi clearly pointed to the first coming of Christ in this after his introduction by John the Baptist. Malachi 3:1. Behold, I will send my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me, and the Lord whom ye seek shall suddenly come to his temple, even the messenger of the covenant whom ye delight in. Behold, he shall come, saith the Lord of hosts. History and the New Testament record undeniably show the fulfillment of the words of Haggai and Malachi. Jesus did indeed come into that very temple that they were crying over as its construction began. They were weeping over its lack of glory, not realizing that it would receive a far greater glory than Solomon's temple ever did. Jesus never set foot in Solomon's temple. He would do so repeatedly in Zerubbabel/Herod's temple. And the reason we say it that way is because Zerubbabel's temple stands for 586 years and then gets a complete makeover by Herod. So whether you call it Zerubbabel's temple or Herod's temple, they regarded it still as the second temple. So Christ never did set foot in the first temple, but he was repeatedly in the second temple, which is a far greater glory. But what are we to make of the words, and the desire of all nations shall come? Now, I've been referring it to Christ. So do most other conservative commentators. But is it warranted to refer to that as being to Christ? Well, absolutely. In fact, no other explanation will even remotely do here. The common objection given is that the nations despise Christ rather than desire him. Because of this, certain other translations render this phrase, the precious things of all nations, or the precious possessions of the heathens. But what, pray tell, do the precious things of the heathens have to do with the context of Haggai's message? Nothing. Zero. They get it wrong. The entire context, going back to God's promise that he was with them in this place and that he would make it more glorious than Solomon's temple had been, is what's in view here. And it demands that we understand it of Christ and that we view him as the desire of all nations. Here's what you want to remember. Feinberg put it this way. From the earliest times, the majority of Christian interpreters have referred to this passage to the coming of Christ. Jewish tradition also referred it to the Messiah. Without being dogmatic, we should like to point out that the desire of all nations can only refer to the longing of all nations for the deliverer, whether they realize it or not. Good words, but let me simplify it a little bit. This world is never at rest, always seeking for something. Name me one nation right now that is satisfied, peaceful, happy. We found all that. We're all good. We don't need anything. There's no nation like that. There's no people like that. This world is consistently looking for what can only be found in Christ. So whether they realize it or not, he is the desire of all nations. So coming back to the present day and to the lack of adornment that would be available in the temple they were laboring to build, God had Haggai say this in verses 8 and 9. The silver is mine, and the gold is mine, saith the Lord of hosts. The glory of this latter house shall be greater than of the former, saith the Lord of hosts. And in this place I will give peace, saith the Lord of hosts. You notice the name there 3 times? Lord of hosts, Lord Sabaoth, the Lord of armies. Again, he uses this a lot during the minor prophets because they didn't have their own army anymore. So he's letting them know you don't need the army. All you need is the Lord of armies. It'll be okay. Now, when God told them that the silver and the gold were his, of what silver and gold was he specifically speaking? Here's your answer. Yes. If there's any silver or gold that exists anywhere at all, it's his. I don't know, preacher. I got my own silver and gold. I got a question. Do you have your own universe? There's only one person I know that has his own universe. His name's God. We are just sort of residents here for a while, right? We don't have anything. Everything we have is a loan. It's a gift from the Lord for a time being. That gold that we wear, one day when you're gone, somebody else will have that gold. And when they're gone, somebody else will have that gold. And when they're gone, somebody else will have that gold. And when they're gone, somebody else. But God owns it all in perpetuity as its creator. Now, the point for those hearing Haggai's message was that God was not concerned in the least with the shocking lack of silver and gold that would adorn the second temple. If he so chose, he could have pulled up a few streets in glory and sent down a few million tons of gold. He has enough of it to pave with. He's not worried about whether there's enough silver and gold in his temple. But God didn't intend to make the glory of this second house equal to the first. He intended to make it greater than the first. And that wouldn't be done with silver or gold. It would be done by something far more precious. It would be done by sending the very Prince of Peace into it to offer peace to whosoever will. Then there's a message of purity, verses 10 and 11. In the 24th day of the 9th month, in the 2nd year of Darius, came the word of the Lord by Haggai the prophet, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, ask now the priests concerning the law, saying. Now there's a 2-month gap of time between the message that ended in verse 9 and the message that begins here in verse 10. In the interval, Zechariah had begun to prophesy, beginning his message in the 8th month. 3 months had elapsed since the reconstruction of the temple began. And while the first message had gone to politicians, priests, and people, this second message would be directed solely to the priests. The following question was to be posed to them, followed by another in verse 13. Verse 12, If one bear holy flesh in the skirt of his garment, and with his skirt do touch bread or pottage or wine or oil or any meat, shall it be holy? And the priest answered and said, No. Now, the questions being posed referred back to the regulations of the Mosaic law found in Leviticus 22, 4 through 6, Numbers 19, 11, Leviticus 6, 18, and many more. In simple terms, holy things that came into contact with unholy things became unholy, but not vice versa. Impurity was transmitted by contact, but purity wasn't. The clean became dirty when it touched the dirty, but the dirty did not become clean by touching the clean. Verse 13 gives another example of that. Then said Haggai, If one that is unclean by a dead body touch any of these, shall it be unclean? And the priest answered and said, It shall be unclean. So if a person became unclean by touching a corpse and then touched something holy, whatever he touched was then unclean by extension. Notice how easily impurity is transferred as opposed to purity. You can see that in the area of sickness. A virus, bacteria, some illness can be transmitted from person to person, airborne contact, until wide areas of people have it. But health and cure aren't transmitted like that. Nobody's ever cured from the flu by making contact with somebody who does not have the flu. Oh, I got the flu real bad. I feel like I'm dying. Let me go just grab all over somebody that doesn't have the flu. It's not the way it works. You're not going to get better that way. Haggai was about to explain the point of all that. Verse 14, Then answered Haggai and said, So is this people, and so is this nation before me, saith the Lord. And so is every work of their hands, and that which they offer there is unclean. The first message of Haggai in this chapter had been one of encouragement. This one was one of solemn reminder. For years they'd let the temple lie in ruins, and thus every sacrifice they made was impure in God's sight and made them impure as well, a never-ending circle of dirtiness. This, as has been previously mentioned by Haggai in chapter 1, had consequences on their daily lives, consequences of which he now reminds them. Look at verses 15 through 17. And now I pray you, consider from this day and upward, from before a stone was laid upon a stone in the temple of the Lord, since those days were when one came to an heap of 20 measures, there were but 10. When one came to the press fat for to draw out 50 vessels out of the press, there were but 20. I smote you with blasting and with mildew and with hail and all the labors of your hands, yet ye turn not to me, saith the Lord. Previous to them heeding and beginning again to construct the temple, because of their dirtiness of not doing it, their efforts in the field seemed utterly maddening. When they came to a heap of grain that should have produced 20 measures, they found it yielded only 10. When they came to the winepress expecting 50 vessels full, the grapes or the olives, if it was that they're looking for, yielded only 20. When they needed good growing conditions, God sent blasting. It's from the word shetifah, means a blight on the crops, and mildew and hail instead. And yet in spite of what should have been an obvious correlation, you read, They turned not to me, saith the Lord. Humans are hard-headed. We miss stuff pretty easily. Verse 18 and 19. Consider now from this day and upward, from the 24th day of the 9th month, even from the day the foundation of the Lord's temple was laid. Consider it. Is the seed yet in the barn? Yea, as yet the vine and the fig tree and the pomegranate and the olive tree hath not brought forth. From this day I will bless you. Now this day is spoken of both in verse 18 and verse 19. That was for emphasis. God wanted them to mark that date and remember it. You ever tell somebody, mark that date on your calendar? That's what he wanted to do. At that particular date, the 24th day of the 9th month, they had nothing and nothing was growing. But since they'd begun to earnestly rebuild and were not stopping, God promised to make everything change from that day forward. Now, it's interesting to note that things did not change on day one. It changed 3 months into the process. Let this one sink in for a second. God says, you need to start rebuilding the temple. Nothing's been growing. Nothing's been doing good. They're all suffering. All right, Lord, we're going to trust you. We've been disobedient for a long time. We're going to start rebuilding. They start rebuilding. After a week, they go check. Man, there's nothing growing. They keep on building. Check it out 2 weeks. Man, nothing's even blooming anywhere. They go to a month. Check again. There's nothing. I mean, no ears are coming out. No leaves. No nothing. 2 months. Nothing. 3 months. Nothing. Why would God wait 3 months and say, from this day forward, you're going to start going out there and you're going to start seeing stuff grow again? Here's why. The effects of long disobedience are generally not erased on day one of our repentance, and people would do well to know that. Put another way, the God who lets us spend a long time digging deep holes that we never should have dug often lets us spend a long time digging out of those holes, mostly so we'll be disinclined to dig any future holes. You follow that? People live wickedly and live wickedly and live wickedly. They're just digging holes, deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And the Lord help me. And if God just snaps his finger and says, all right, everything's cured, everything's better, automatically, all at once, how long do you think it'd take them to start digging again? By letting them have to dig and work and live by faith and live by faith and live by faith, and then starting to bless, they understood, number one, it's God doing the blessing, and number two, I don't want to do that anymore. It took a long time to get into this mess. It took a long time to get out of this mess. I don't want to be like that anymore. I think I'll just obey the Lord. Then there's a message of promise, verse 20. And again, the word of the Lord came into Haggai in the 24th day of the month, saying, now the date of this prophecy is the exact same as the prophecy of verse 10, the 24th day of the 9th month. But where he earlier in the day addressed the priest, this later in the day prophecy will once again be addressed to the governor. Verse 21 and 22. Speak to Zerubbabel, governor of Judah, saying, I will shake the heavens and the earth, and I will overthrow the throne of kingdoms, and I will destroy the strength of the kingdoms of the heathen, and I will overthrow the chariots and those that ride in them, and the horses and the riders shall come down, every one by the sword of his brother. The words Haggai uttered here are a restatement of the words in verses 6 and 7, with additional details now added. The Jews who had been so oft persecuted and taken captive were being given the promise that there was a final end to all of it. God would ultimately overthrow the throne, the seat of power of every kingdom of the heathen, along with their weapons of warfare. In fact, one of the methodologies he would use to do that would be to turn those heathen against each other, brother against brother. To the Jews, even then, in fear of nations all around them, and with dark memories of long years of captivity at the hand of the heathen, this had to be like the balm of Gilead. Verse 23, in that day, saith the Lord of hosts, I will take thee, O Zerubbabel, my servant, the son of Shealtiel, saith the Lord, and I will make thee as a signet, for I've chosen thee, saith the Lord of hosts. Now, it's still the future that's in view. That day of verse 23 is referring to the promises of verse 21 and 22. But how would Zerubbabel, who would be dead for thousands of years by then, be able to be the recipient of this promise? The answer is both by extension and by resurrection. Since Christ would come through the line of Zerubbabel, he would, by extension, be the recipient. But we can observe elsewhere in the prophets, Ezekiel 37:25, for one instance, that David himself will be resurrected and enthroned again during the millennial kingdom. So why should it seem odd that Zerubbabel will be used in a similar fashion again as well? Resurrected Old Testament and New Testament saints will not be museum exhibits. We will be useful servants. The last words of Haggai's prophecy, and will make thee as a signet, for I've chosen thee, saith the Lord of hosts, gives further credence to that. When we think of signet, we usually add a word to it. It's the word ring, signet ring. It's what they meant as well. It was an emblem. It was a symbol of great worth and an identifier, a symbol of authority. So Zerubbabel, standing there in the ruins of a temple now finally being rebuilt, was being informed that God so prized his work that he would bless him for forever. So let us sink in. As he stands there looking, it's like, this is terrible. It's terrible. This thing's small compared to the first. I mean, we don't have the builders like we did the first time around. The material, I mean, it's like all Lowe's pre-built, pre-warped lumber. I mean, it's just like, what are we going to do? It's terrible. This isn't going to be worth it. And God says, not going to be worth it. Oh, it's going to be more worth than you think. My son's going to walk in that temple. And I'm so pleased that you're building it that 1,000+ years later, a couple 1,000+ years later, I'm going to bring you back and let you serve as governor all over again. You want God to prize you? You prize God's house.